I'm the world's greatest. I'm the world's greatest. I ain't even trying to brag, but I'm just saying, old girl flat out a hustler. I watch her when she word things.
No.
A lot of people don't know how to talk to her. I'll be like, are you a licensed doctor? I want to see you slither out of that. You're not a registered doctor. Everybody looked it up. A lot of people looked it up.
Everybody thought we were just being haters. Everybody thought we were just trying to keep a cute black woman down because we were jealous.
A license is really only needed so you can bill insurance.
That is incredibly misleading. Yes, you do need a license to bill insurance, but that is not why licensure exists. Licensure protects you. It means I have completed specific education and supervised clinical hours, passed rigorous exams, and I'm accountable to a regulatory board. If I breach
So many of you weren't ready to hear this when we first brought it up, but we warned you about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, and now the validation is coming from a source that's harder to dismiss. To be specific, because this matters, we've had male therapists weigh in on this before, and that's been covered on this channel. Corey Hawk also called out Dr. Cheyenne Bryant a long time ago, but now there's a licensed female therapist, someone with a doctorate, coming forward and saying exactly what we've been saying for close to 2 years. And look, it gets exhausting being consistently ahead of the curve on these things and not getting the recognition for it. But here we are again.
Practice under a license. Now I'm in private practice, I'm saying. And that's what people don't understand, right? So just to educate some folks a little bit.
Hello, my name is Dr. Raquel Martin. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, professor of sciences, and podcast host who specializes in Black health and well-being. And I want to break down a clip from the Joe Budden podcast featuring someone who presents herself as Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. But before we dive in, I want to make something incredibly clear. Having a doctor does not mean someone is a licensed mental health professional.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the question of whether she actually holds a legitimate doctorate is one we've been trying to get a straight answer on for a long time. The school she reportedly attended no longer exists, which makes verification essentially impossible. And on top of that, there are some very convenient gaps in the paper trail surrounding her credentials. Key details are either missing, omitted, or simply unverifiable. So when we say doctor, that title itself is very much still in question.
In literature and be unlicensed, and you are still a doctor. You can have a doctorate in education and hold an LPC, being a licensed professional counselor, and you are a licensed mental health professional, and you are still a doctor, but your doctorate is not in psychology. When evaluating anyone's credentials, it's really critical to look at two things: what their doctorate is actually in, and whether they hold a relevant clinical license. In this case, the person you're about to hear from is unlicensed. I'm going to break down why that matters and why this particular message is harmful, especially to the Black community that she claims to be serving and that I actually serve.
And doesn't that sound familiar? This is exactly the kind of thing we were raising flags about. And instead of people engaging with the substance of the concern, the response was to dismiss it entirely. We were written off as haters. People assumed the criticism was rooted in jealousy, that we were just trying to tear down a successful Black woman because of how she looks. But that was never what this was about. The concern was always about the information she was putting out there and whether the people consuming it were being guided in the right direction. We said that clearly on multiple occasions. Nobody wanted to hear it then, but now that someone with undeniable credentials is stepping forward and echoing the same concerns, suddenly it's worth paying attention to. So let's keep going, because she's just getting started.
Is really only needed so you can bill insurance.
That is incredibly misleading. Yes, you do need a license to bill insurance, but that is not why licensure exists. Licensure protects you. It means I have completed specific education and supervised clinical hours, passed rigorous exams, and I'm accountable to a regulatory board. If I breach confidentiality, if I cross ethical boundaries or harm you, you have someone to file a complaint and be sure that I'm accountable. A license is not paperwork just for billing. It's a consumer protection.
And this right here is exactly what we were sounding the alarm about. One of the biggest red flags was when she publicly identified Ray J as one of her celebrity clients. Now, out of respect for what he's going through, no disrespect to Ray J, the brother is clearly dealing with some real challenges right now, but that's precisely the point. When your therapist is out here publicly name-dropping you as a client while you are visibly struggling and going through a very public meltdown, that alone should raise serious ethical concerns for anyone paying attention. That is not how legitimate, licensed therapy works. Client confidentiality is one of the most fundamental principles in mental health practice. We weren't attacking her because of who she is. We were pointing at something genuinely concerning about how she operates. But instead of engaging with that, the conversation got twisted into male podcasters being misogynists who needed to be silenced. Meanwhile, we were raising these exact concerns long before this licensed therapist even knew Dr. Cheyenne Bryant existed. The timeline speaks for itself.
Loses or no longer has a license, they're not solely avoiding the insurance hassle. They're also removing your recourse if something goes terribly wrong.
Not binded by BBS, the behavior board science rules and regulations and ethics. And so it just opened up a whole nother, floor in industry for me.
And she's also saying this like it's a good thing. I want to state something really important. Ethics codes exist to protect you from exploitation and boundary violation and providers practicing outside of their competence. When someone celebrates being free from ethical oversight, I want you to think of that as a red flag, a flashing one.
Beaming.
It's a warning sign because those rules exist because real harm happens when they're not in place. So celebrating that you don't have to be accountable to that should be concerning to you.
As a therapist, two things: you can obviously make what you deserve because therapy is real. We're giving everything we have in there.
You hear that? She's talking about money. You can get what you deserve is what she's talking about. That is her main motivation. If you haven't noticed, anybody who's been paying attention noticed this already. But we need to have reinforcements before people take us seriously on what we're saying. Insane. Should be listening to Black men far more than you do.
And we're unpacking shit and we're helping you process through things. So it's not us sitting there with you're an effective therapist saying, tell me more. You should be unpacking and you should be able to take somebody and drive with them to their goal.
And here's another thing. She keeps calling herself a therapist, and in most states, that's actually illegal without a license. You cannot legally use the title therapist or provide psychotherapy without licensure. What she's describing now is coaching, and coaching and therapy are fundamentally different. Coaches help with goals and accountability. Therapists are trained to diagnose.
And she's been using them interchangeably.
And treat mental health conditions, trauma and depression and psychosis. If someone with untreated bipolar disorder or PTSD thinks they're getting therapy from a coach, they're going to be seriously harmed.
Yes.
These are actual conditions that go undiagnosed and untreated, especially within the Black community.
My clients, the truth is that in order to bill insurance, I have to diagnose you. And you only get about 6 weeks. In order for me to get 6 more weeks approval, guess what?
This frames diagnosis as something imposed on you solely for insurance purposes, and that's backwards. A diagnosis isn't a billing trick. It's clinically meaningful information that guides treatment. And the 6 weeks claim is also not accurate across the board. Now, I'm not saying that we should not be addressing insurance because we need to rise up when it comes to insurance authorizations. Like we very much do. That is a different video. But insurance authorizations vary widely by plan, diagnosis, and medical necessity. Many people receive months of years of covered therapy. And she's also making it sound like licensure forces short-term diagnosis-driven care. And that's just simply...
And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the mindset. The attitude being projected is essentially all of you out there practicing therapy the right way, following the rules, maintaining your licenses, you'll never earn what I'm earning. There's a certain irony in that when you consider some of her publicly stated views on dating and financial expectations from men. It gives you a pretty clear window into what's actually driving this. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be a genuine desire to help people, because here's what a licensed mental health professional will tell you. That's simply not how any of this works. The argument being made is that traditional therapy creates a barrier because insurance-based practice requires diagnosis, and many people in the Black community would rather pay out of pocket than go through that process. And look, the access problem is real. Mental health care has genuine affordability and accessibility issues in underserved communities. That part of the conversation is legitimate. But here's where the logic completely falls apart. This is the same woman who had a $10,000 offering listed on her own website, and we covered that. The receipts are there. So the idea that this is about making mental health more affordable for the Black community doesn't hold up. The majority of clients she's publicly referenced are celebrities. So are they paying less? Are they getting some kind of discounted community rate? Or is this just a premium VIP packaged experience being sold by someone with a chain around her neck that says doc, credentials and all?
Unregulated, unlicensed coaching isn't the answer. And there are a wealth of licensed Black therapists, he, she, and they, Black-owned practices, sliding scale clinics, community mental health centers doing this work with their licensure intact, keeping their credentials because their clients deserve protection. The solution to healthcare access gaps isn't removing safeguards. It's expanding access to regulated care. It's providing more scholarships for people like us to get the training necessary. It's more support group. It's actually mutual aid, but it's not what she is stating.
I'm in private practice. I make much more money. It allows me to have more leverage and really be hands-on with my clients. I'm not binded by BBS, the Behavior Board Science of Science rules and regulations and ethics.
And I want to be honest about what's really happening here because the messaging is awful to me.
Yes.
The pitch to potential clients is, I can give you more personalized care. The pitch to herself is, I make significantly more money and I'm not bound by any kind of oversight. And those are two entirely different things. And when your financial incentive is disconnected from professional accountability, that is a conflict of interest. However, she is not bound by anything when it comes to conflicts of interest because the only thing that she is bound by is the limits of her own ethics and morality.
Yep.
Look, coaching has real value. And y'all know I hold real coaches down. If you want goal accountability, a coach can help, but coaching is not therapy, and no coach worth their salt will say anything other. If you're dealing with mental health like anxiety and depression and trauma and these other things, you deserve a licensed mental health professional whose conduct is subject to oversight. And I know it sounds like gatekeeping, but it's truly basic safety. And it's important in communities where access has been denied historically. The answer has never been fewer protections for us as Black people. It has always been more access to regulated, accountable care because we deserve that.
And that's really the question that cuts through everything, isn't it? Set aside the credentials debate for a moment and just look at the outcomes. Think about every podcast appearance, every on-air session, every public interaction she's had with people who came to her in a vulnerable state. Ask yourself honestly, how many of those people walked away in a genuinely better place than when they sat down? How many left with real tools, real clarity, real progress? Because from what we've seen, the pattern points in a very different direction. Rather than facilitating healing and understanding, a lot of these appearances seem to generate more conflict, more division, more chaos. And when the person who is supposed to be the professional in the room is consistently at the center of that kind of outcome, at some point you have to stop blaming the guests and start asking harder questions about the person holding the microphone and calling herself the therapist.
That it took me some time to think about doing this video because as a Black woman, it's just been really, really tough for us as Black women.
That.
And as someone who states that they advocate for the Black community, he, she, and they creates programs for the Black community, is the founder of the largest mental health and education community for Black women in the country. I totally understand where we're at when I'm holding my programs and things of that nature. But I do want you to know that I always state that my Black love is also accountability. And being Black does not mean that...
Hold on. We're not letting that one slide. That word she used, that concept she glossed over, accountability. Let's sit with that for a second. Because how many times have you heard Black men bring this exact point up, that there's a real and consistent pattern of avoiding accountability in certain conversations, and people brush it off, dismiss it, call it misogyny. But there's a reason that point keeps coming up. There's a reason it doesn't go away no matter how many times it gets shut down. And here's the thing. When someone is genuinely trying to give you something useful, when someone is speaking from real experience and trying to point you towards something better, the worst thing you can do is tune it out because you've already decided you know more. That arrogance has a cost. And the fact that this microphone is here, that this platform exists and has been right about these things time and time again, that's not an accident. That means something. So when we're talking,
it might be worth actually listening.
Black does not mean that when I'm dealing with other Black people, I'm pro-Blackness no matter what you do. That's just never going to be the case. So I don't want you to, I don't want to hear anything about like, oh, this is an attack on a Black woman. It's not solely, it was the aspect of supporting Black people was never about supporting just Black people no matter what they do. It's supporting Black people in love and also having accountability.
Right.
And these messages are wrong. And they have been wrong. And they have consistently been wrong.
Yes.
And as someone who has the size of a platform that I have, I think it's important for me to share psychoeducation and information because I understand the significance of it. And I understand the significance of it because I'm actually working in this field. This is a really harmful message. And I do understand that there's this aspect of like things are entertainment, but these things are harming us. And I know
She's clearly positioning herself in the mold of figures like Dr. Joyce Brothers or Dr. Ruth, media-friendly personalities who built public profiles around relationship and psychological advice. But here's the key difference. Those women, whatever you thought of their approaches, didn't carry this kind of reckless energy into their public work. They weren't out here operating like a bull in a china shop the way we've seen Dr. Cheyenne Bryant behave on multiple occasions. And one specific example stands out above the rest, the situation involving Cam Newton. From what we observed, she inserted herself into the details of his personal relationship and started offering advice and making suggestions that Cam Newton never asked for in the first place. Uninvited commentary on someone's relationship delivered publicly by someone presenting themselves as a mental health authority, that's not therapy, that's not help. And if that interaction contributed in any way to putting his relationship in a more difficult position, that's not a small thing. That's a real consequence with real people attached to it.
actually working in the field. I am a doctor who creates content, but I do want to state that when I say the titles in the beginning of my video, I'm actively doing that work. I'm actively conducting research on Black identity development and mental health and well-being of the Black community. I am actively practicing as a licensed clinical psychologist and see patients weekly and have been seeing patients for over a decade. I am actively a professor and working with youth. I am actively a health educator when it comes to training clinicians in cultural humility so that they can serve us better. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of individuals will say it's not that deep or state that it's just entertainment is because, one, you think mental health in psychology is just folk wisdom, and it's not, it's a science. And two, you guys are very insulated from the field that you claim to be discussing because you don't work in that field and you haven't in quite some time. But as someone who walks into the offices and sees the clients and goes to the talks and does the community programs, we are struggling. And these little entertainment only pieces that are spreading misinformation, you're doing more harm for the Black community than you know.
Wow.
And the reason why you don't know is because you're so insulated from the Black community. You just sit in front of these mics and you make all these money and you do all these Patreons and you wear these crazy hats and you do all that. But I would actually say I don't see these kind of places as pro-Black. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. And the only way you would know that is if you did the work that I do. And you're never going to, because one, you're not qualified. And two, it would break you down. It will break you down every single day. I've never heard so many people saying licenses and degrees didn't matter until more Black people started getting licenses and degrees.
And that right there, shots fired. But honestly, she didn't say anything that wasn't true. You can't fault a statement that holds up under scrutiny. There may be a detail or two worth debating, but the core of what she said was accurate. And it lines up almost perfectly with about 10 or 11 videos that have already been made on this exact subject, including coverage of Corey Holcomb addressing it in depth. And look at the results. Sold out the Tabernacle Theater. That's not an accident. That's what happens when you're actually delivering something of substance. Meanwhile, the core issue remains. She's not a doctor. That's not an attack. That's a finding. And when that gets pointed out publicly, the reaction is defensiveness and hostility, which tells you a lot about how fragile that whole image actually is. We've covered her interactions with Paul Pierce. We've brought this up more times than we should have had to. And here's something worth noting. For the most part, men saw through it relatively quickly. The presentation, the positioning, the motivation behind it all raised questions almost immediately for anyone paying close attention.
What's the real agenda here? That's what people were asking. But instead of engaging with those questions seriously, a certain crowd rallied around her and framed any criticism as an attack on black women, while simultaneously ignoring the fact that black men are among the most involved fathers in their children's lives, whether they live in the household or not, something that never seems to come up in her commentary. And while all of this was playing out, genuinely qualified professionals, people like Dr. Raquel Martin, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, the kosher clinician, and others who are actually licensed and actively practicing were being completely overlooked. They're not getting invited onto the major podcasts. They're not getting the platform calls. They're doing the real work in the field and getting ignored while someone with questionable credentials gets handed the microphone on show after show. That's the part that should bother people the most. And shout out to Corey Holcomb for being the first one to call it out, and he did it early, which matters. He had first-hand knowledge, and he used it. We've been in your corner on this one the whole time, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you got something out of this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell so you don't miss any uploads. Go down to the comment section, swipe left, and hit that hype button to help push this video in the algorithm. And make sure you sign up for the False Media Patreon. There's a deep back catalog over there and a lot more coming. This is False Media. We'll see you next time.